Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Pat Basil, this one I've been looking forward to for a while. I've actually enjoyed your media, and while we've interacted a little bit, we've never met in person. This is our first face-to-face time, but I just like the way you think about strength and conditioning. And I mean, you got a pretty good track record here. I mean, you're a certified strength and conditioning coach through the NSCA. You have you have a master's in exercise science. You actually did an undergrad in psychology, but from a business school, which I actually think is brilliant when it comes to the coaching side of stuff and the marketing side. And you're very savvy with your media. I mean, you've got a really strong Twitter following, which is not that common anymore with, a lot of the people at our industry. So I know you're savvy about that, but I'm, again, grateful to have you on the show.
Absolutely fired up to be here. No, this is, I remember you reading your articles when I first started coaching myself. This is definitely a full school.
Wow. Well, again, I love going back to the old T-Nation stuff. I mean, that's kind of how I guess I got a little bit more of a foothold in the greater industry. Okay, so I got some quotes pulled out. I like this. I'm going to let you elaborate. So, quote, training needs to be hard enough to trigger gains. Training is just giving people stimulus they need for the training level that they're at. And so you talk a lot about creating the appropriate stimulus for adaptation. I want you to elaborate on that. And why do most people or a lot of people miss the mark in their training with this?
I was actually just having a car thought about that. Why this came to be, why do people think of, traditional hypertrophy program or a bodybuilding program versus a quote unquote strength program? And in reality, if you actually look at physiology and the research, they're really not that much different. It's all just applied progressive overload a different way. There's a lot more similarities than there are differences. So I was kind of going through, how do we get to that as a society or as just a fitness world? How do we land on that? And then kind of come back to that. But the biggest thing, and I guess they are tied together, is people don't realize, the average person doesn't realize how, I don't want to say how little training you need, but how what most people think is an effective training load as far as total volume or work being done is much more than you actually need to make significant gains. The key is going to be two things. One, it's going to be consistency, but then effort and intensity. And I don't mean just sweating and being tired and miserable, but pushing hard and straining on your last two reps. That you want to get into the 1 to 2 RPE if you're fancy with the lingo. But if you're straining on your last few reps of your last set, and you're showing up and doing that 3 days a week for 5 years, you can make astronomical gains. And most people, athletes and coaches included, really underestimate how much progress you can make with what most people would say a shorter workout. It doesn't take nearly as much as people think to make substantial gains. And this is not a minimal effective dose nonsense. There's nothing minimal about it. It's just what's optimal and what's effective is just much lower than people realize. And that's one of the things I try to get across. And the bar to make those gains, the stimulus and stress that needs to be applied to make strength and hypertrophy gains, is a lot less than people think. And this is having tested myself and trying to do less and less and less and realizing you can get into the gym fairly quickly and make that progress. And then where does that come from? It's from what comes down to media. And I think it even started with old bodybuilding magazines. That's how I got started.
Me too.
Right? We all did. I say when I grew up, this is textbook Long Island, barbershop right next to the textbook bro bodybuilder gym, like Jersey Shore, fake cans, the hair, the whole bit, Long Island to a T. It's where I grew up. That's where I came of age as a lifter. So you'd go to the barbershop, you'd read the bodybuilding magazine, because that's what we had on Long Island. And then you go to the gym. What's Ronnie Coleman's shoulder routine? I'm going to go do that. I'm 12 years old. I don't know what else to do. And it worked. But it's like that, those magazines and things like that, if you think about what's the point of selling a magazine? It's advertising, right? In order to get you to sell advertising, you have to put a magazine and you have to read it. It has to catch your attention. That's how they make money. So what people don't realize is a lot of those things were inaccurate. It wasn't actually Ronnie Coleman's shoulder workout. It was we're just going to throw some junk on a page. We'll give Ronnie some money to put his name on it. And people think, oh, I want to look like Ronnie Coleman. I got to do this. And what it really was a marketing ploy to sell whatever it was, advertising, supplements, and magazine subscriptions. So that became so pervasive. People did it for years and years and years, that this ultra high volume and this no pain, no gain. Well, guess what? If you take people that have never really trained and you blast them with a bunch of volume, they're going to make progress. What they don't realize is they're probably done about 1,000 reps more than they had to. Well, I did this for years and it worked. Yes, but you could have also done a lot less, been a lot less hurt, and made really the same progress, or not left anything on the table. So I think that's where it came from, and I think it's a double and triple down on social media. You see, like, 1,000 rep arm finishers, this and that. It's people want the burn, they want the this, and want the that, and it's the harder I work, the more I'll get out of it. Physiology just doesn't agree with that. Biology doesn't agree with that. There's a tipping point to volume. This is heavily researched. Younger training age kids, high school kids, college athletes who haven't really trained, don't have a high training age. And I'm telling you, me, after 20 years of training myself, I don't need 1,000 rep arm finishers. They sure as heck don't. So that's one, and it's still so prevalent out there. So that's one thing I want to get across to my audience, things like that, is you really don't need nearly as much as you think. As long as you have the intensity, the quality, and consistency, a lot falls into place.
This episode is brought to you by Just Bite Me Meals. I work long days and I won't compromise my client experience or sacrifice my workout, sleep, or nutrition. So I needed a quality and reliable meal prep service so I could save time on cooking and shopping and have more time for the stuff that matters. Net out the cost of groceries, and the service isn't as much as you might think. And regular impulsive food delivery apps, eating out, that costs way more anyway. I get more meal variety and less dishes to clean, and I've been referring clients to Just Bite Me Meals for a long time, and I recently started ordering myself. Food is great. The beef brisket tacos are my favorite so far, and there's a lot of menu choice. Your calories and macros are listed. The portions are great. You can order custom meals. They deliver to your door, or you can pick up from their storefront. And I'm sorry to listeners outside of Alberta, but Just Bite Me Meals is currently just in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Ordering from Just Bite Me Meals made my life easier instantly. And you can get 10% off on all your orders using my code, Andrew Coates Fitness, all caps, on their website. That's Andrew Coates Fitness, all capitals, or go to the link and the code in the show notes.
There's a funny thing. There's probably an intersection of three cohorts of segments of the population that this all applies fairly equally to. So you got younger people, young kids just starting out, younger athletes, let's say beginners. We've got the the everyday person with a family and a job, and we've got the let's say the high level athlete. All three in a way have a cap on their time and their ability to recover from volume. I mean, the pro athlete, because it's life stress in the case of the busy adult and the athlete. The kids, there's a lot more recovery capacity, but again, they're newer, so they don't need as much dose. But in the case of the athlete, well, guess what? They need recovery for the other types of their practice. Certainly if they're in season, you definitely don't want as much volume going into their workouts. And for the everyday lifter, I mean, there's this theme has come up so many times. I just had Matt Wenning on. We talked about stress, Joel Jameson, Jason Brown, and there's a big deep dive into the average everyday person just does not need as much strength training. And that's come up a lot in Joel's episode, a lot in Jason Brown's episode. I think that and what you're alluding to is the people who ultimately end up following the path of the bodybuilder. And I had Brett Schoenfeld recently on talking about this, and Dr. Pack. I mean, we definitely see, like, you can get, you said this, great gains with a lot less than what we think. Now, past a certain point, there's diminishing returns. That doesn't mean it's necessarily net negative. So to probably be an elite bodybuilder, right, really, really super muscular, like I kind of tip over to that, you probably are looking at more frequency, more volume, that gets higher. For the vast majority of the people who live everyday lives, who are not obsessed with the shit the way I am in the gym, chances are, what do you think, like 3 good full body training sessions a week would just absolutely be the sweet spot?
Absolutely, 100%. 3 days a week. I think most people could get away with, if you did, say, 4 solid compound exercises, 2 lower body, 2 upper body, anterior, posterior. Or if you did a leg press, a chest press, a row, and say a leg curl, and you took each one to 3 hard top sets, it could be as little as that much. And if you stack that for, say, a year straight every week, yeah, 3 days a week most definitely can make substantial progress for most people.
This episode is brought to you by Renaissance Periodization and the RP Hypertrophy app. RP is the industry leader in muscle building, coaching, and education. And this app is like having a coach in your pocket. It gives you everything you need, including training programs, form videos. It gives you all your sets, reps, and weights, so you just show up and follow the plan. It adjusts each week based off your progress. And the app was created by Dr. Mike Israetel, Nick Shaw, and the team at RP, who I've known for many years. And the entire team are incredible people who've always been supportive and generous with me, so I know their character and they're easy to endorse. My library contains several RP books, and I've used RP training principles in my workouts and coaching with my clients for many years, long before the explosion in popularity of their YouTube channel, which is worth checking out. RP is the first sponsor I felt remotely comfortable endorsing after over 7 years of podcasting. And if hiring a one-on-one coach isn't for you, using the RP Hypertrophy app is the next best thing to maximize your gains and take the guesswork out of your program. And there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free. If you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. And I've also got a serious discount for you of up to $50 US. Go to rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP, or go to the link below in the show notes. And that's rpstrength.com/coats. Use the code COATSRP.
And I think what's built into all this, and the reason why a lot of people struggle with the progress they're seeing it, is the consistency part that you mentioned. Like, is just how many people really are week in, week out able to be consistent. And yes, we know life gets crazy and busy and what have you, but I think this is why the messaging about like lowering the threshold of what you need, the fewer workouts, everything you're saying might be the mindset shift that people need to go, well, shit, I probably could be pretty consistent with that. Or the week where I can't do 3, well, fuck, I certainly can do 2. Like even one full body workout a week is going to give you maintenance, volume, and intensity on almost everything. That if you're back to 3 the next week, and most of the time you're getting near that 3, you're going to make sensational progress. Any additional thoughts there?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we have to kind of shift the mindset away from looking at training in weeks, because what it is, it's applied stress over time. And we say 3 days a week, that's on average. If we were to zoom out, some weeks it's 3, some weeks it's 2, some weeks you go on vacation, it's 1, some days you're motivated and you do 4. It ebbs and flows. And I think what people have a tendency to maybe get down on themselves. If like, oh, I only got 2 lifts this week. That's actually really good. If you're a busy person and you got a career and a commute and kids, you know what? It's another week where you check the box and you stayed in the fight. There's only so much progress you're going to make in a month. We'll zoom out to 6 months, zoom out to a year, zoom out to 3 years. If you can get 2 to 3 legit workouts a week for 3 years, that's amazing. And it's, if you have to adapt what you do and how much you do to make that happen. And the phrase I use to people is keep the streak alive. And as a streak is in a week. So if you don't get 3 days, okay, did you get 2? Great. Did you get 1? That's fine. Keep the streak alive. And just keep that streak alive for a good 6 months, a year, you're going to be astronomical different. So I think part of it is shifting your mindset of I happen 3 days a week, or I'm not serious. No. Life happens. Keep the streak alive, keep the intensity up, and on average, it'll average out.
And this is where the psychology comes in. It's challenging the narrative. So do you find that, because I love challenging anybody that I work with about their belief systems, their stories, their narratives that they've woven. And oftentimes these stories are what justifies behavior that tears them off track. So do you find that it's like the story people tell themselves about their lack of consistency that just sends them spiraling?
It's prior beliefs, or it's this, the idea that it has to be this astronomical feat, or they just haven't seen the proof that so little can be effective. I have to be 100 miles an hour all the time, or it's worthless. And I think that could be a belief that they have to break. Like, you don't have to be beating your head against the wall every single week. You can just, with consistency and effort, make substantial gains. It's almost like cruise control. You don't have to run your car to the max speed your entire trip. You can put it at a good, 60 miles an hour and get to where you're going, kind of on autopilot, if you stay at that consistent speed. But yeah, it's not that you have to beat your head against the wall every day, but understand that it doesn't really take that much. But again, they don't understand that. It's understanding that amount can be effective and believing it.
You made me think of something. So I know there was this, and I'm going to be blunt here. There was some fuckball who posted this on Threads, and it was something about, and I've heard this rhetoric before, and then they made a comment about judging the people that they see at the gym all the time and they don't make progress. And I've worked in commercial gyms for a really long time, and I can't count the number of regular people who, or number one, it's like you see people very consistently and you don't notice these little changes, right? That's one thing, but, or yourself in the mirror. But let's say you've got someone, maybe they're a little older and they're in the gym pretty regularly. Their consistency is fantastic. Maybe even their intensity could be dialed up a little bit. But, and let's say hypothetically that they really haven't put on any new muscle. You probably aren't noticing their strength and performance changes over time. You're just not noticing, but visibly, maybe there's not a lot of change. But here's the other side of it. As they're getting older, they're not losing ground, because what's happening with everybody else who's not even in the gym? They're gradually losing muscle mass. We know that happens past a certain age. They're probably losing bone mineral density. They're certainly losing strength, speed, power as we get older. And that person who may be on the surface, you're not seeing, like, because you're also attributing your value system to this person. Like, maybe this person doesn't care about being like super muscular. They want to feel really good. Maybe they're managing injuries. They want to maintain their metabolic health. They're getting a tremendous amount of benefit. And you're looking at them going, judging like the fact that, oh, this person hasn't put on any muscle in like a while. You don't fucking know what's going on with them. But they're light years ahead of anybody who's not making that effort. And they may actually be really good at the sweet spot of the frequency, volume, and intensity that leaves their body feeling great. They've got good energy for the rest of their life. They're keeping their health in check. You don't know their health story, and they're doing just fine.
Yep, absolutely. And here's one people don't realize, especially if you're a young trainer in your early 20s, people don't want to get hurt, because that's a huge impact on your life. Like, imagine you blow out your shoulder. Okay, either I'm living in chronic pain because I have this problem, or I can't afford to sit at my desk and work with a sling after a labrum surgery for six months. I just can't afford it. So a lot of people are afraid to strain or push because they don't know where that line is. And it's like, you know what, this is head and shoulders above the people who aren't there, but don't discount that. I think one of the biggest impacts a personal trainer can have on a person is that, okay, to let them say, okay, you tend to do 5 more pounds, or okay, you did 10, let's do 12. Just so that person knows, like, okay, I can push a little more and I'm not going to get hurt. And just have that professional say, yeah, there's a little more in there. You're okay. You're still within that safe range. So, you know, if that person is comfortable there, and don't discount getting hurt, because they might be able to afford to miss work, or it's just a different quality of life. And like that value system you said, some people don't, they're good feeling good and moving good, and they don't need to have, you know, skin splitting bicep pumps. You know, I'm all about that, sure, but most people, they don't necessarily have to. And you know what? That's fine. As long as they're healthy and blood work's good and all that, go for it. Not everybody's going to be the same there.
I think what you just described too is, and I like this concept, is creating psychological safety for people. And that manifests in many ways. And one is, yeah, you know, I've been watching you. I know what you're capable of. I know you can put a little bit more weight on the bar and you're going to be perfectly fine. And having a coach that they trust, they feel safe to do it, where otherwise they may not challenge themselves, right? Or they may think that, well, shit, I need to grab I have to put the 10-pound plates on each side of the bar. It's like, no, let's just slip the 2.5s on there. Okay. There won't be a big change. You're going to be fine. Here's another one that you threw up there. Quote, will training get boring if I don't change anything for 4 weeks? No, too bad. It works really well. And why is resisting the urge to change up workouts important for progress? And it's funny because I just had Matt Wenning on, and we actually got to do a nuance, because he likes variability, but within similar themes. So, and it makes me think sometimes guests may say things that are seemingly inconsistent, but if you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of it, there isn't incongruity here. So what do you think about this?
Most people, lower training age, beginners, intermediates, people with a lower training age, like when they're going to make significant progress just building skill and mastery in the exercise. The more they stay with the exercise, the better they're going to get at performing the exercise. The better they get at performing the exercise, the more weight they can use, the more load they can apply, the more reps they can do, the better stimulus they're going to get, the less soreness they're also going to have. So the longer you stay with it, the more you can chip away at it week to week to week to week, and really squeeze the juice out of that exercise as long as you can. So there's this prevailing belief with strength coaches, and in my field in particular, that if you don't change the exercise every 2 weeks or so, your athletes are going to get bored and they're going to think you're mailing it in, and they're going to revolt against you and you're going to have mutiny. And it's just not true. And if anything, if you change exercises too soon with lower training age population, for the most part, they're never going to build the skill in the exercise and they're never going to master that technique. And you're leaving a lot of gains on the table and they're going to be confused week to week to week. Also, think about it, going back to the psychology piece, what keeps people going? Those little wins each week where they say, I did this for 5 reps and now I'm doing it for 10. Wow, that's amazing. To most people, that's like, oh my goodness, I didn't think I could get that strong that fast. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be 50 pounds on a chest press machine. If you can point to them like, hey, we did that for 5 and now you're doing it for 10 a month later, that's the fuel to the fire a lot of people need. That's the proof, right? I'm putting this effort. It was a huge barrier for me to overcome to get started. And here it is. It's working. Why would we stop that progress? Why would we not pour that gas on that fire by changing the exercises every other week? That's my philosophy. There's so many benefits to staying with something and getting really good at it than to change too often. Then it comes down to, do you want to be entertained or do you want to be trained? Because I think there's certainly a balance there. But we got to err on the training side. If you want entertainment, I'm certainly not the guy.
And there's something brilliant in that too. This is for the coaches. Like, there are clients who just want a certain something. If someone comes to me and they really want like randomized circuit training and they really just want like almost like a cardio experience, sometimes they sort of present that way, but with trust, I can get them to buy into the fact that, hey, I can give you a bunch of supersets so I can keep the intensity up a bit. And usually just like have them push a slider out or swing a kettlebell at the end, which is a good anaerobic stimulus anyway, but could give walking away feeling like sweaty and tired the way that they want to, while still practicing the good fundamentals of resistance training for the rest of the workout. But every once in a while, I'll get someone where it's just like, this is just not a good fit. I'm not the right kind of trainer for you. Maybe you need to go do something like an Orange Theory or an F45 or what have you, or find a trainer that likes circuit training, right? Or do a boot camp or whatever. All good. Like, I think, I still think that any exercise, any movement is net good, but I'm in the business of, all right, I also want to give you what you need. I'm good with, to a point, dressing up what people need with what they want. But then if I get a little bit of time with them, trust, and I can get them to appreciate what you described, which was the wins of it with a little bit more weight on the bar, that feels incredible. And I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay. Rate of force development. What is it? I just want you to define this, and why is it important, and how can we train it?
So I define it as, it's how fast you can accelerate a load. How fast can you apply force in an instant? So this applies to how does strength training, how do we bridge the gap between barbell strength and then the field, being fast on the field? Because we've all seen athletes, if you work with higher level athletes, that can squat a house, they can bench press, they can deadlift, but they're just still slow on the field. They get better, but they just can't translate it. And that's called the explosive strength deficit. And that's straight from Science of Practice Strength Training, which is a classic sports performance textbook by Zatsky, Orsi, and Kramer. Bingo.
It's funny because Matt Wenning and I were talking about this on the last episode, so I'll put it up here again because these episodes are probably back to back, so people are getting this, right? So this is a classic. Yep.
And any coaches, if you haven't read that one, it's all in there. Like, literally, it's all in there. It's all in there. So it's, how do we bridge the gap between being able to lift a heavy barbell and training maximal strength and then being able to apply it in an instant? That's rate of force development. So it's good to be strong, but we have to be strong, take it, and be able to apply it in a way on the field. That's where your things like your short maximal effort sprints to get faster, your jumps, your plyometrics. And then as you get more advanced, your dynamic effort strength work, your loaded jumps, velocity-based training is becoming very, very popular, although it's not new at all. It's making the rounds on social media quite a bit. It's another tool for you to use for your dynamic effort work. But all of those things that take that maximal strength and improve the speed at which we can apply that strength in an instant, that's rate of force development. And that's how we bridge the gap between strength built in the weight room and actually being able to use it on the field to create separation right.
And so you mentioned on the field. Now, what about the person who isn't, the athlete? What about the person in their everyday life? So how does this show up for them? Where does it matter?
Any functional thing you want to do. If at Ayrton you want to apply your strength in whatever manner, it can help you. I say the definition of functional strength is if it helps you move. Well, guess what? To get the couch off the ground, nobody's ever going to say, all right, we're going to lift on 3, 1, 2, 3, and then pick it up really slow, right? You're going to pick it up and get it in the back of a truck. Well, rate of force development could help you there. Or I remember I was helping my dad load bags of mulch into a back of the truck last summer. We had, I don't know, like 15 bags of mulch, and we would grab chuck. And I was literally like a medicine ball, like grabbing it, pushing off my foot, and like scooping my hip through. I must say you have to train to load the bags of mulch in the Home Depot parking lot, but it does apply to that kind of thing. Or shoveling snow up here. I mean, you're certainly familiar with this.
Yep. And you read my mind. I was thinking like snow shoveling because we do tons of that here in Edmonton, Northern Canada.
Absolutely. You get a big scoop, especially when it's heavy and dense, that kind of semi-wet. You got to put some force in it and huck it over the fence or off your driveway. That's force development, right? That's transferring your gym strength to that functional movement. You know, anything in life. I got another example for you. I got a 2-year-old nephew. So I'm hanging out with my mom. My mom is babysitting my nephew. Yes.
So guys, I apologize for interrupting here, but anybody watching the video, Ozzy made an appearance close enough for me to scoop him off. He normally doesn't like being on camera. So for the video watchers, I got Oz. So like I'm 6'2" and 245, and you guys, I mean, he's in the foreground of the camera. You see how large this guy is. And no, I don't believe he has any Maine Coon in him. But anyway, Pat, I interrupted you with Ozzy, so please.
I'm actually surprised my guy hasn't come up. He likes the interrupt videos as well. Cat enthusiast, so please. But like picking up my 2-year-old 40-pound nephew and like winging him over the shoulder, or like got to scoop up the kid, got to answer the door, get the UPS package. Like you're not gonna slowly, gingerly pick up the 2-year-old toddler. Like you got to scoop and grab, and the dog's part, you got to push the dog back. It applies there.
Well, I mean, even think about me just getting him, right? Like if I was slow, he's gone, right? He doesn't want me to pick him up when I'm on camera, right? So I had to I'm sitting, I'm twist over, and I grab him with one arm really quickly before he can react. Cats are super fast. And so it applies. What kind of stuff can you get? Because there's also another dimension. It's the ability to produce force quickly, but it's also the resilience against the motor patterns against load, right? So, I mean, people hurt themselves all the time shoveling. I think it's almost like that. It feels like it's like the number one thing during the season, whether it's, I don't know, they go out, they're not warmed up, and they start hucking, snow, maybe it's a little too heavy, but they're just not used to it. So how could we train that movement? I mean, like first thing comes to mind is like just throwing medicine balls around at different angles. I love shit like that.
One, overall, just getting stronger in your foundational movements. It all translates. So getting stronger in your compound exercises, your squats, your hinges. No muscle in the body in a major exercise is going to act in isolation. Not going to happen. Everything is going to stabilize. Everything is going to lend a hand in some way, shape, or form. It's going to help add stability to the movement. It's going to be a prime mover. It's going to aid in some way. So getting generally stronger is going to translate to all of that to start. And that's your lowest hanging fruit, is just getting generally stronger in your major foundational movements. And the implement you use doesn't exactly matter as long as you're making progress. But then even basic exercises like basic medicine ball throws, lower level jumps, and there's no age limit to these things. But people don't realize if you train adult clients, if somebody who's in general decent health, they can throw medicine balls. It's just going to be 4 pounds instead of 20 pounds. They can do box jumps. It's just going to be, a 12-inch box to start, not a 30-inch box like an athlete would. But people can do these things, and they certainly can. Or even if it's just the idea of one of the best ways to train, another phrase is compensatory acceleration for the listener, being the ability to accelerate a bar at maximal speed is in your warm-up set. So if you have somebody who actually does have some strength, lock out your reps or whatever it is, your bench press, your deadlift, your squat, with some force and treat it like 1 rep max. And that skill and that speed is going to translate to your heavy reps. That's a key telltale sign of a dead serious lifter, is they move 135 with the same intent and speed as they move 500 pounds. If their sets at 40% and 90% look the same, that is a serious lifter. So just moving your early sets faster with really pushing on it, you're going to get a lot of that early transfer.
It's the old saying, treat lightweight like it's heavyweight, so the way you could move heavyweight like it's lightweight.
Bingo. It's true. 100%.
You made me just think about, so I've got a client, and she's in her mid 70s and she's had a couple of knee replacements, right? She's getting stronger. She came to me, probably about a year and a bit ago. But I got her 4-pound medicine ball, rotationally, like hucking that thing, stepping into it, hucking it at a brick wall, and she likes it. She enjoys the hell out of it, but it's lateral movement, which we don't often train enough of. And I don't know how many older adults are doing a lot of like explosive lateral movement. She's got explosive work in there. And it just really works well for her. And it's, there's nothing dangerous about the idea of just throwing this big, soft but light ball against a wall.
Absolutely. That's fun.
Damn fun. And there's something to be said for keeping this shit fun for people, right?
Mhm. Totally.
Okay, so you mentioned jumping, and this one comes up a little bit in places. There's a lot of confusion over what is or isn't plyometrics. Can you actually explain what plyometrics are? And then maybe we can like tamp down on the argument about that online, and maybe what matters, what's practical, what might be useful for people.
Sure. So I'm going to give my definition of plyometrics when I'm using what I would consider something that's more plyometric in nature, what I'm trying to get out of it. So I'm going to speak to my specific definition. And the difference between a jump and a plyometric is, are you using the rapid eccentric stretch reflex or the stretch shortening cycle to pop off the ground with the idea of minimizing ground contact time? So the difference between a jump and a plyometric, a jump I consider to be a one-shot, all-out maximal effort. Like think of a box jump. I load up, I swing my arms, I jump, I stick the landing, I'm done, reset everything. It's a one shot to raise my ceiling of power output. That's jump training to me. Plyometric training goes back to how fast, it almost ties into that rate of force development idea. How fast can I take that gross power output ability, gross force production, and apply it as fast as possible? That's what a plyometric is to me. So something like, let's say a repeated hurdle hop, let's say I have 5 hurdles in a row, and each landing, spring off the ground right now. How much force can I put into the ground? And then how much height can I get and really train that ability to pop off the ground? The term for that is elasticity. And how much force can I apply in a millisecond? Because in sport, that's what it's going to be. You're going to be able to sprint, plant your foot in the ground, and change directions immediately. You're not going to have time to load up and really dig in your foot. It's how much can I do right now? And that's a very specific skill that's highly trainable. Maximal effort sprinting is probably the best plyometric you can do to train that type of thing. And then also the specific application of that movement in the sport. Being able to know where you need to be on the field and why. Seeing that, this also ties into I know I'm getting off track, but the cognitive process, because it all ties together. Of being able to see an external threat or stimulus and then making the decision on what to do. Right. That's all in sport. That's part of it.
I really like that a lot. And something I missed saying when we were just talking about rate of force development, as we get older, something that's important about being able to be strong and explosive is, in the case of a fall, being able to catch yourself, because now you have to very quickly catch your body weight from an unstable position, or whether it's also like you may be able to catch yourself before you fall on something, or you may actually have to absorb the fall in such a way that you limit the likelihood of a fracture.
Absolutely. And then get up off the ground if you do.
Very important skill. Yeah. And I guess even like somebody bouncing back up pretty quickly is, there's a elasticity to that. You can benefit from that elasticity to get yourself up, especially if you're an older adult and maybe you're not necessarily that strong, but being able to get back up again is a difference. I talked about this at Robert Linkle a lot on an episode not too long ago. If you guys are interested in this particular topic, guys, message me. I promise I'll share it with you. But we do occasionally see horror stories of an older adult has suffered a fall and a break, but it didn't kill them. But they didn't have the phone near them, and they ended up they get found days later, and they lived for a while, but they just simply couldn't. They did not possess the strength to be able to get themselves back up again to get help, which is horrifying.
Absolutely, and it's real. It's common.
So, what about something like adept jump? So you're on a small height box, and you drop
Mhm.
into the depth. Like, do you like stuff like that? Can you explain that?
I do, and I like the simplicity of it, and I like the effectiveness. It's a good tie together between the elasticity and the one-shot maximal effort. So the depth jump, where I'm stepping off the ground, I'm getting that instant force production, trying to minimize ground contact, but it's still a one-time, all my efforts going into this one shot. I'm putting everything I have into this one rep. So you're getting a good blend of both. And these, I would use those specifically like toward the end of my working in the college setting. At the end of like 12 or 16 weeks, we're building up because I can really, it's a very fast velocity movement. It's typically unloaded, although you can do it with like a loaded eccentric. And it's a good blend between the two of a maximal effort output, but still trying to minimize that ground contact time and apply it right now. So it's a very effective, a very simplistic, simple way to do it. And it's also very scalable. If I worked a lot with large groups of 30 to 40 plus athletes, you can step off a box or a bench and boom, there's a depth jump. Super potent, super effective, super easy, very easy to learn, right? You step off and jump as high as you can. I love the simplicity and the scalability of it. So super effective and fits very well in tough logistics.
And if someone's not used to it, you just have a smaller, by scalability, you mean like they can step down off of a lower setting, because a lot of this stuff, and I want you to explain how to set up, how you would program it, where in a workout you would, how you would scale it, how much volume. But a really critical component is graduated exposure, so that way people develop the tolerance to these impacts. Because I believe now, I'm not aware there's a ton of evidence to support this, although intuitively it makes sense. But having people exposed to, jumping these like landings within reason, these forces should be good for injury resilience, but especially bone mineral density. Now, whether or not it's enough of a magnitude and a frequency of stimulus to actually have like a lot of adaptation effect for bone mineral density, I think general resistance training is best. But how would you program it, and how would you, when and how would you program it?
Specifically for the older adult.
I mean, let's say for anybody, the older adult kind of follows under the umbrella, because we're probably talking about people who are not doing much of this anyway.
Sure. Yeah, even any untrained person is going to be in a somewhat similar boat. So I like something like that early in the workout. And here's why. So I'd warm up. After I warmed up, I would do that first. And the reason being is you can produce the most force when you're the freshest. So whether it's speed training, whether it's explosive work, the thing you need to put the most output and effort into, you want to do that first while you're freshest. The fresher you are, the more output you can put into it. So I would do it, if not first, early on in your workout before you start to get fatigued. I think then you could put the most effort into it. Also, if it is new to you, doing something new when you're tired, you're going to be a little less focused. Your attention's going to be a little less. And if it is a potent training stimulus, we're obviously going to apply with a new person in a safer manner. But there's common sense applies that if you're using a new thing, somebody who hasn't jumped or hasn't jumped in 30 years, I want their full attention on it from a safety standpoint too. So make sure to warm it up properly, but early in the workout, I think is the best spot for that, for those reasons.
That's where I like to do it. That's definitely what I seem to think is the prevailing wisdom on this stuff. Are there any other specific tools? Actually, no, let's go here first. Like, what about volume and graduating exposure to this stuff? How much people need?
So if anything is worth being trained, it's worth doing at least twice a week. And if minimum once a week, if you're going to do anything, do it consistently. So once or twice a week, volume wise, for the average person, you could get up to say 2 to 3 sets of 2 to 3 reps. That would be a good start. So jump training for most people around that 10 rep range total combined to start. And if you go up 10 to 20% in total volume every other week, I like to, especially with new things, keep the same thing, build familiarity. If you were to add 20% every other week, that would be a good point. With higher level athletes, I keep my jump training. I'll work up to about 50 to 60 total reps of that per week, maximal effort jumps. But that's younger athletes, high school, college, early level pro, over the course of some time, months, years. But 50 to 60 total reps, you spread that across 3 training days, and that's like at the top. But for most people, say 3 sets of 3 on day 1, that's a good starting point. Like if we did just a basic squat jump, hands on hips, bend your knees, jump up and land, 3 sets of 3 or say like 2 sets of 5 would be a great start. It's enough to do it. It's enough to teach your body to kind of produce some force, but it's not going to be so much where you start to develop shin splints and knee tendonitis. It's just not enough volume to make that stuff kind of flare up. So that 10 rep mark is a great place to start per day.
Are there any tools that you really like? I've got a few I'll share after, but for, a more general person, that is probably pretty accessible and probably also fun. For explosiveness.
Any exercise I like, the fewer barriers to entry we can. Something as simple as your own body weight. Just bend your knees and jump. That's a fantastic one. I also like seated jumps. Sit on the jumps, rock to your feet, jump up, stick the landing. Those are 2 really good ones to start with. So a squat jump, just hands on hips, bend your knees, jump, stick the landing. And a seated jump, rock to your feet, jump. I think that's a perfect one to do. Those are 2 fantastic ones. If you're a little more nimble, a low level box jump is pretty good. You also feel kind of like an athlete. Oh, I got my box, I'm getting some height. I see kids doing this. I'm out here, I'm doing it. So if you're a little more nimble and you can do it, I like a box jump. And the point of the box, people don't realize this. The point of the box, so you don't come crashing back down, landing on the floor. It limits the landing, so it's not such an impact. So if you can get to it, it's a really good thing to start with. So if you're a recreational athlete, if you play like a basketball or you're kind of a golfer and you still got some activity, a low level box jump is a great place to start on top of those other 2.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mentioned recently on the Matt Wedding episode, I got this from Stu McMillan on Andrew Huberman's podcast, and they were talking about a lot of sprint stuff, but they were talking about skipping. And I love the idea of, because if you're skipping alternating legs, not jump rope skipping, but alternating legs, and you try to get like maximal lift, but still jumping off one leg, especially if you're not used to doing it, then you're probably not going to get very high. So you're not dealing with a tremendous amount of impact, but you are getting a little bit of impact exposure to, having your Achilles tendon produce and absorb the landings of these kind of forces. So I find it's a really low risk, high reward, because you could get pretty high output. I think one of the best things is why medicine balls are so great for this is if you can use a tool that lets you pretty much try to like exert maximal effort, where it's like this big light ball that you're throwing against a wall. Like you got to be doing something really weird or just really unlucky to get hurt throwing a medicine ball against a wall. Or, you take a sled with appropriate load where you're trying to sprint with the sled, but it's heavy enough that it's like you're not getting to top speed with that. Then you're creating a really safe environment, I think. Not that this stuff is inherently unsafe, but I think it's a really safe environment. Some other stuff I like swinging a sledgehammer against a tire, right? I like kettlebell swings, and I tend to think of kettlebell swings one of 2 ways. Earlier in a workout, heavier, lower repetition for more explosive emphasis, or later in a workout, which is a bit more like, you're still probably fairly anaerobic with your training stimulus, but it's slightly higher reps, you're just watching for form breakdown, but you get the heart rate up a little bit. So any other thoughts on those things?
Yeah, like you said, anything where I'm putting force into it, I'm trying to move the load with some sort of speed will apply. Medicine balls. I also like rope slams are another good one.
Yeah.
Especially like a rope. Anything like that where you're trying to move whatever resistance with some sort of speed or power, it all falls into those buckets of good ideas.
And I think you could also do this really well with something like a ski erg, because you can do a ski erg very similar to, ropes. If you don't have, more people probably have ropes than ski ergs. Air bikes are fantastic for this because you could do like really high intense intervals, and then take long chunks of rest and then go back. I mean, again, that's probably still a little bit more of an anaerobic thing, but you can still get pretty explosive with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Plus you're going to get your heart rate up pretty high on the air bike, which people need a lot more of.
Yeah. And that's why I keep saying anaerobic stuff. Like, we're probably not getting a ton of that. I mean, resistance training is anaerobic by its very nature, but it probably isn't pushing, the kind of stimulus that people need to create the adaptation to improve their anaerobic energy system conditioning, which is really just short burst, more intense capacity to do work.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. So one last thing I want to ask you here. If you have someone who wants to improve their ability to be active. We've already covered a lot of this. As they get older, maybe just participate in recreational sports, quality of life. Is there anything else you'd prioritize on top of what we talked about?
Whatever you can stick with long term, that's what's going to give you the greatest. It doesn't matter what it is. If you stick with it, you're going to see progress with it. I would say start with things you enjoy. If you like to golf, start golfing. If you like to swim, swim. If you like to hike, hike. If you like pickleball, play pickleball. I think I would actually love to see, and this research is going to come out in 5 years or so, the effect of like health and community and like psychological and physical benefits of pickleball players specifically. I think it's going to be a huge positive shift we're going to see in health research, specifically from pickleball, with getting off track. Something you enjoy, something you like, or at least you can tolerate. I'll give you a good example of myself. I was like the anti-cardio wannabe powerlifter for way longer than I should. But I said, okay, I got to get with the program here. We're going to do some sort of activity. And for me, that was walking. And I started to go for walks because I would tolerate it. I said, well, okay, I can walk. Well, guess what? I got to walk. I learned I actually enjoy it. And once I enjoy it, I'll do it more. And now it's just become part of my life where I have to get my steps every single day on top of any other conditioning I do. But start with the lowest hanging fruit you'll do, something you either enjoy or something you'll at least tolerate. And walking is so beneficial. I know it's kind of become cliche these days, but the evidence and the research on improving your step count per day is undeniable. It's such a beneficial thing. So if I could pick one specific thing, walking is fantastic. You can get from increasing your step count from what it is to more in general. But if you can at least get to that 6,000 step mark, and if you can push that to 8,000 steps a day on average, absolutely fantastic for most people. So I would say either start with that or something you find enjoyable.
All right, a couple of things. One is I'm going to infer something here. Given the fact that I see how you approach your Twitter, I am certain that you use your walking time as a space to get your mind free to think of ideas. And I bet you capture that. If you're not directly doing Dan K-O-E, his sort of like philosophy and media, it's born from the same place. And a lot of the people who have a more active Twitter presence tend to. Dan Coe and Dan Go are two totally different people. Love their media, both of them. Very similar philosophy. You see people like Cody Sanchez and Alex Ramosi. It's all kind of born of the same approach to social media. But getting out and walking creates the space for creative thought. So for the coaches listening, especially who like this, I think it's brilliant. I like sitting on a recumbent bike and reading books. And I'm putting together a presentation on writing for fitness, which I'm going to do at the CanFit Pro Global Conference in August in Toronto. And I'm reading a book that I like, the Art and Business of Online Writing. I'm reading it again, Nicholas Cole. So I recommend that to anybody. But I'm reading, and then I got to put it down halfway through a page because I get an idea, and I keep piling up these notes in my phone that's going in the presentation, but it's giving me all these ideas. Now, back to pickleball. Mechanistically, what do we know? Right? You alluded to this. We know that the social stuff there's mountains of research on how valuable social interaction is for longevity and health. We just know that. If you get someone who is moving more, you're increasing step count, they're physically active. We know mechanistically this is huge. So we know the mechanisms behind it. The research, once it's there, I'm sure will point to just how potent this is, especially if we could separate populations who went from being relatively inactive to going and playing pickleball in a social setting. I think it's going to be a powerful driver. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that. But I don't think we need to wait for the studies on that one. I think the mechanisms are just so proven anyway that, guys go out and do it. My buddy Mike Dola is a huge proponent of pickleball. He loves the stuff. So, Pat, you've been amazing. Everybody can follow you at P Basil Strength on Instagram and on Twitter. X. I keep calling it Twitter. I mean, it's always Twitter to me, but X now. Yeah. See, P Basil Strength. So, and you are very active, post a lot on both of those platforms. So, I'm assuming probably Threads as well. I didn't look, but I mean, if you're going to post it to Twitter, it goes over to Threads, right?
If it's already on there, yeah. You got to order a cross post. Yeah.
What other resources would you like to direct people to?
I'm also on LinkedIn if you're in the professional setting. I'm starting building that up now. And YouTube too. Not as much, but it's all on there. So any of those social media platforms, I'm on there. those would be the biggest things. I have a lot of resources and things like that that I share free on there. So my emails are going to be on there. That's another one I share, a daily email specifically geared toward athlete strength and conditioning, but I do throw some other stuff in there. And you can find all those on my social media handles. But I'm very, responsive and active on there. So if you see me, shoot me a message on any platform you use, you'll find me there.
I love it. And, for all the enthusiasts listening, your stuff's great. For the coaches, I really want you guys, and this is why I highlighted, I try not to make these episodes too much anymore about like the career development, but there's some stuff in there. And if you watch how Pat goes about posting, the frequency, the way you structure everything, there are a lot of lessons in here. It's why I picked up on, the similarities between your Dan Coes and your Dan Goes. And I like that a lot, which is one of the things that got my attention quite a while ago. And you're one of the rare people where I found you, I think, through Twitter first, and then poured it over to Instagram later, right? I'm just like watching your stuff and trying to interact with it a little bit. So there's a lot of good value there for coaches as well. For anybody who has found you through this episode, who's a regular listener, go follow Pat, please. And if you're someone who has just found my podcast through Pat's media, well, take a scroll through who I've had as guests. There's a lot of industry superstars, elites. I think there's a lot of valuable stuff in here that you guys will love. So I would love to have you stick around, earn you as a regular listener. Pat, thank you. You've been incredible. I appreciate you.